July 31st.
I know. When
I know, right?
last time, like,
The most.
he was having
Yes.
symptoms, and tested negative. So
They
then I
still
was
do.
like, oh, we don't need to isolate. And then 3 days later, he came back positive. So I'm like, well, we're
Really?
gonna
Well,
miss that chance too. But
cool.
I know some people that have it.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the summer before last.
Yeah.
Remember that summer Omicron
Yeah.
hit and everybody got it?
Well, and then I think was it last year? My daughter was back 2 days and she got it.
I remember that.
Yeah. And
Yeah, but I think it was wildfire last year. But
yeah.
this
What do I
year.
have to do to
Yeah.
start this?
Like
What do I have
she
to do to
got
start this?
it May that
Should be
year,
in your name, but
and then
it's
I
always
think
on.
I didn't
So
get
you
it
kind of
until
just put it. It does
last
the
year
only
in
time
like
if you're looking,
May, but
especially going a foot away. So I
like
just
the
do that
first
until it's my turn.
So
First, the turns to go on and off because everybody's worried that it's not right.
I know I don't even
Like a Zoom call where you're muted, but it's your preference. But they're really, it's really weird. They're so unfunded. They don't just pick up random sound.
yeah.
You have to kind of be close. That speaker is.
Oh right.
I always go with 6 inches stereo rather than
Yeah, yeah.
6 inches is where they told me
right, you had to go back up and everything.
that it sounds right.
Yeah. But that's
So the youngest, he missed 2 days of school, which I hate, and my daughter really wish she would stay home. She was too determined to go, so she won't manage it. But yeah, and now that I'm back to work,
Hey,
yeah, he'll probably be in all kinds of stuff.
Come to order. Tonight, we will begin with a preliminary determination hearing. After a presentation by the administration and its advisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the project. For the hearing, we will ask that each person limit their comments to 3 minutes and that the topic be limited to this hearing. There will be an additional opportunity to make public comments during the regular meeting, and I declare this meeting officially open. Mr. Kenny, you may proceed.
Good evening, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, members of the board. Tonight we have the first hearing on preliminary determination. Pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-20, before a school corporation enters into a lease and/or issues bonds for the construction or renovation of school projects resulting in total costs in excess of certain thresholds, it must hold 2 public hearings on its preliminary determination to do so. This first hearing is open to the public for comment. Also before you tonight is Resolution 2024-10, Declaration of Official Intent to Reimburse Expenditures. If the corporation pays any preliminary costs related to the project in advance of receiving the bond proceeds, this resolution allows us to be reimbursed from bond proceeds once the bond proceeds are received. The IRS requires that a school corporation declare its official intent to reimburse as documented in this resolution in order to reserve this ability to reimburse. I would now like to introduce Jeff Hammond, a director with Baker Tilly, to present financial information regarding the corporation's bonds and related debt, as well as a summary of the proposed bonds.
Good evening, Dr. Winston, members of the board. As Mr. Kinney mentioned, I'm Jeff Hammond with Baker Tilly. So what I will be presenting on tonight is the financial parameters that will be in the resolutions to be considered for the project. This is the first of 2 project hearings. So the information that I will go through relates to those financial parameters, and then we will do it again at the next hearing, which will be on September 24th. I'll also mention that per state statute, we have handouts of the required financial information available if anyone is requesting those. So with my presentation this evening, the first thing I'm going to go on, if I can get this. Might need to turn it on here. Okay. So the first place I'm going to start is with a chart of the school's existing bonds outstanding. There are currently 8 bonds outstanding, and you can see the payments, the annual payments associated with those in this chart. We'll kind of circle back to this a little later in the presentation, but I always like to begin with what the current bond payments are and how those are structured. You can see at the end of 2039, all of the bonds currently outstanding for the school corporation would be fully repaid at that time. This is going to be hard to read, so I'm going to be quick here. This is just the data that populates the chart we just looked at. So you can see of the current bonds outstanding, what the annual payments are associated with each of those. And then the total payments in that far right column. In 2024, total bond payments are at about $17.7 million per year. This is a slide of the school corporation's general obligation bonding capacity. So the bonds being considered by the board are what's called a general obligation bond. And that means that the school corporation is the direct issuer of the bond. There's no building corporation involved to actually issue the bonds. The school corporation is the direct issuer. And anytime a bond like this is being considered, there's a formula that determines the amount of capacity that you have to issue a general obligation bond. And that is what we're looking at on this slide. So it's kind of an interesting formula, but you start with the school corporation's net assessed value. The 2025 net assessed value has been released, and that is what is on the top line here. It is $9,685,012,844. To apply the formula to arrive at your general obligation bonding capacity, you then take that net assessed value, divide by 3, and then take 2% of that. That gets you to your debt limit that you could do as a general obligation bond. And this is not the total limit that you could do as a bond in general, just using this mechanism of a general obligation or what's often called a GO bond. The next and last step is to subtract out the principal remaining on any existing bonds that have been done through this GO bond process. And when we do that, we get a capacity to issue just over $15,850,000 as of today as a general obligation bond. So I wanted to share this information because that will tie into my next slide, which is a summary of the proposed parameters. So in the resolutions that the board will be considering at the end of the next project hearing, there will be these financial parameters in those resolutions. At this point, these are all maximums, so they're not to exceed estimates. We won't know the exact impact of the bonds until they're actually sold later this year. However, when we arrive at these numbers, we try to be as conservative as possible. So we use higher interest rates than what we see in the market. And again, the idea behind these is that they will, the actual financial parameters can be less than this, but they cannot be more than these parameters once they're adopted. So we are setting the maximum borrowing amount at $15,850,000, and that coincides with the general obligation capacity we looked at on the prior slide. We're assuming that these bonds would be repaid over 10 years. The school can take up to 20 years, but we're assuming that these would be repaid in about half that in about 10. The estimated total interest expense, this would be over the lifetime of that 10-year borrowing, we're projecting to be a little over $5.8 million. But again, these are using very conservative interest rates. We're basing that number off 6% interest rates. We're seeing market interest rates in the low 4s right now. The maximum annual payment associated with this bond is projected to be $2,264,300. And that payment, based on the net assessed value we also looked at earlier, translates to a maximum tax rate impact of 2.22 cents. So again, when the bonds are actually sold, it may be less than this. It likely will be less based on current rates, but this is that not to exceed parameter that will be in the resolution. And then I've also included an estimated incremental impact over the 2024 rate of 5.11 cents. Again, this is an estimate at this point. It's the school's desire to keep the total tax rate level with where it was in 2024. And we'll look at in a couple slides a little more how these proposed bonds can do that with your existing bond payments. The next slide just contains, in the green, that's the chart we looked at the beginning of the presentation. That represents the school's current bond payments. And the blue color represents a proposed payment structure on the 2024 general obligation bonds. So again, as mentioned, we're assuming this would be repaid over 10 years and that the debt service, so strictly talking debt service tax rate, would increase slightly, but due to the net assessed value growth received in 2025, we're again projecting the total tax rate, which includes the referendum fund, the operations fund, and the debt service fund, to be level with where it is in 2024. And then my last slide here is just the information that populated that chart that we just looked at. In the far left column are the existing bond payments. In the middle represents proposed payments on the 2024 general obligation bonds, and then the total on the far right. Again, just to mention, we do have the per statute, the handouts available if requested. Those we have as well. So, are there any questions from the board pertaining to that presentation that I just talked through? All right.
Thank you for that information. Mr. Kenny, anything else?
Just a reminder, the resolution is the only thing that needs to be voted on tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from the board on this matter? Okay, we will now receive public comments regarding the hearing. What was that? Okay, no cards for that. As Mr. Kenny explained, we will be adopting Resolution 2024-10, Declaration of Official Intent to Reimburse Expenditures. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we adopt Resolution 2024-10 as presented. All those in favor of the motion to adopt Resolution 2024-10, Declaration of Official Intent to Reimburse Expenditures, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you to all who participated in the hearing. We appreciate your time and interest in the project and the future of our community. I do want you to please note that this is just the first step in the legal process. The board will continue to work with the administration and its professionals to look for efficiencies to conserve tax dollars while meeting our educational needs. And so just please do be on the lookout for more information about these things. The board will hold a second public hearing here at the CoLab on September 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. This hearing is now closed, and we will now open the regular meeting of the board. As we move into this portion, this is a time set aside to celebrate members of our school community. Mrs. Harmon.
Thank you, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and the Board of Trustees and community members. It is my pleasure to share a few highlights of this month's celebration of success and our 24-25 Equity Spotlight Award winner. The celebration of success is a feature at every regular Board of School Trustees meetings. It recognizes the achievement of MCCSC employees, students, and volunteers who make a difference in our school community. We are thrilled to announce that Mary Jane McNabb, a dedicated school social worker at Bloomington High School South, has been selected as the Indiana School Social Worker of the Year. This prestigious recognition honors her exceptional commitment and service to our students and their families. Ms. McNabb is known for her unwavering support and the invaluable resources she provides, helping students navigate challenges and achieve their full potential. Her compassionate approach and tireless advocacy have made a profound impact on our school community. Please join us in congratulating Ms. McNabb on this well-deserved honor. The Equity Spotlight Award recognizes students, faculty, staff, student organizations, schools, and community partners for fostering inclusive environments that reflect the MCCSC mission, vision, and core values. The August Equity Spotlight Award goes to Haley Cook, Ivy Tech College and Career Coach. Ms. Cook demonstrates an exceptional commitment to fostering equity and inclusivity within the MCCSC community through her role as the college and career coach in partnership with Ivy Tech. She plays a pivotal role in supporting students as they prepare for college and career success. Her dedication to ensuring that all students, regardless of their background, have access to resources and guidance for post-secondary education is exemplary. Ms. Cook actively works to bridge gaps in educational opportunities by helping students overcome potential barriers in their pursuit of post-secondary education. Her commitment to equity is reflected in her efforts to create a level playing field for all students. MCCSC is grateful for the partnership with Ivy Tech and all that Ms. Cook does for our students and families. Thank you, Ms. Cook. And that is it. Thank you.
On behalf of the board, thank you so much, Mrs. Harmon, and congratulations to all those recognized tonight. It's always an exciting time to see what's going on in our community and in our school community. That's positive. Okay, we will now receive our quarterly update on the activities of the MCCS Foundation from the Foundation Director, Mrs. Helm.
Thank you, President Hennessy, school board members, and Dr. Winston. Well, it's nice to be here. First quarter, first month, right? You guys have been back in sessions, and we're excited to get going with the rest of the corporation and the faculty and the students. Our board met today, and we have approved our annual budget. We are projecting an income and spending threshold of $523,000 throughout the course of the year to provide the programming and support that we do back to the corporation. The first program is open. It's been open since July. We do have some teachers who like to access it during that time, so we always try to get that up for them. So our fall grants are open, and they will close October 1st. They are open in curriculum enrichment, science and environmental, and also the elementary library grants are only open in the fall, but the others will be open in the spring as well. The full budget for the course of the year is $60,000 on that, and we sort of have it divided, but if we have some really great grants, it doesn't say that we have to stick to any one number in the fall, but overall the budget for the year is $60,000. The second program that will be kicking off for us is Roman Reed. That begins in October. And I just would like to publicly announce we do have some volunteer places open in that. For anybody who's not familiar with the program, it's a kindergarten literacy program. The volunteers are all males throughout the course of any age, any gender, or sorry, not any gender there, it is male. So that is to present a male influence in the child's life, and that's the reason. So there's not any other reason other than that. So if you are interested, you are assigned one kindergarten classroom. You stay with that one classroom throughout the course of the school year. You read 5 times a year, and then the foundation purchases the books, and each child inside the corporation gets a copy of that book. So it's a pretty amazing program, and most of the volunteers that have done it speak very, very highly of that opportunity. So feel free to email me if you would like to volunteer. Reading, Writing, Bidding, which is one of our fundraisers, will be coming up in the first quarter. We're pushing that forward just a touch out of the normal realm. We're going to be opening that November 11th through the 19th. Normally we're right after Thanksgiving, but with the how late that is in the year, we thought it'd be better to push it up. So watch for that. We do have an exciting bidding platform, and we're starting to collect on that. If you are a business in the community or even an individual who has a craft or hobby that would like to donate to that, please feel free to reach out to us. We did receive in July NAP credits. That is Neighborhood Assistance Program. They are tax credits. We do still have some left. If you are interested in those, you can contact our office. And then I always just want to remind people that there are a lot of ways that you can give to the foundation without necessarily having to monetarily take from your own pocket. You can have an education license plate. Those are available when you renew your license plate. They still have a little owl on them, so you can use those, and we do get a piece back from that. If you shop at Kroger, you can hook your Kroger rewards to us. If you are a member of the IU Credit Union, you can hook into the debit card program there where you carry one that's logoed for the corporation. It carries the 4 high schools, so North, South, the Academy, and oh, I knew I shouldn't have said all 4 of them because that hit me. BGS. There we go. Sorry about that. Little mind melt there. We also have a similar program at German American, and theirs is called the Spirit Card. So any of those will actually bring receipts back to us, and it's not something that you have to take from your own accounts, but it is something that you're doing proactively to support us. Thank you, and appreciate having this time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Helm. We appreciate these updates. We will now continue with public comments. We have just a couple of those tonight. Thank you to those who completed a comment card and acknowledge the guidelines to speak. Mrs. Butcher will ring the bell once to signal you have 30 seconds remaining for your comment and 5 bells to signal that your time has concluded. We will begin with Mitchell Farmer.
Hi. First, I want to say thank you to the staff of the Adventures Camp at Templeton this summer. We had a fantastic experience there, and I also want to say thank you and congratulations to everyone involved in the start of the
seem like there's been any budget that has been set for the merger, and no metrics for success. With this merger happening so soon, it kind of feels like right now there's just a blank check that is going to balloon into something that sunk cost policy is going to kick in. It's just going to balloon out of control. So I want to make sure that we do set a budget or how much this should cost, how much you expect it to cost. Very concerned of being able to get that money to do that. And that kind of goes into the redistricting. Well, looking forward to the update on that today, and want to make sure it's being compared to the merger as well. But if we don't know the budget or how much it's going to cost or the metrics for success, I feel like it's going to be hard to make the comparisons there and find out which one is actually going to be better, and make sure we're not doing the redistricting because of expense when we don't know what the alternative is or anything like that. So looking forward to the update on that and really specifics on it of what's it going to cost, what does everything look like, how does it compare to the merger, and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Burris. And thank you to all who provided comments tonight. This now ends our public comment period, and we will move on. If you'd like to leave, feel free to do so. If you want to stick around, that's great. We will be giving an update on the merger later on, so whether you stay or go, I do hope you listen in for that information later on. Now for our consideration is a consent agenda that includes the following: minutes from the regular board meeting held on July 23rd, 2024, memorandum from the executive session held on July 30th, 2024, ECA expenditures, overnight and out-of-state field trips, financial report from July 2024, the appropriation balance report 2024, register of claims August 27th, 2024, the payroll register and payroll claims July 2024, and the request to declare as surplus and authorize disposal of out-of-date items. Do I have a motion regarding the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next, for our consideration are the donations. We have received donations of over $500 this month. Thank you to all our donors. Your generosity is always greatly appreciated. Do I have a motion to accept the donations?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ashley and seconded by Brandon that we accept the donations as presented. All those in favor of the motion to approve the donations signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now we move into old business. For our consideration, we have the final reading for 3 new policies. This is 3519, professional staff, 4519, support staff, and 5519 for students. This is the equity-oriented sexual identity and gender inclusive policy. Is there a motion to support policies 3519, 4519, and 5519 as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ashley and seconded by Aaron.
Kathy.
I'm so sorry. It's been moved by Kathy and seconded by Aaron Wyatt. I was trying to remember that I needed to say the last name of the Aaron, and so my brain just got... Anyway, that we adopt the 3 new policies mentioned as presented. Mrs. Harmon.
Thank you so much. I would like to recommend the Board of School Trustees adopt 3 new policies: 3519, professional staff, 4519, support staff, 5519, students, equity-oriented sexual identity policy. I presented these 3 new policies for the first reading at the July 23 meeting of the board. These are new policies to MCCSC, and I so recommend.
Thank you, Mrs. Harmon. Do we have any comments from the board?
Just thank you for all the work that went into making these policies. I know it's super important to our kids and our community and our staff, and I'm excited that we're doing it.
Anybody else? I am also too just really grateful for these policies, especially in a state where these values are not always valued. And so I'm greatly appreciative of that and of the work that our staff has done with our students to really craft these policies. I think it's so important, and one of the things that I think has been so incredibly moving over the past few years is the work that students have done to really understand policy writing and to write the policies that are important to them, and that those policies then become policies also for our staff and our teachers. And so I'm just extraordinarily grateful for the work that's gone into this, and I know it's hundreds of hours, and grateful that we can adopt these tonight. Okay, any other comments? All right. All those in favor of the motion to adopt policies 3519, 4519, and 5519? Good grief. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next for our consideration is the Personnel and Additional Personnel Report. Do I have a motion to approve the Personnel and Additional Personnel Report as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ross and seconded by Ashley that we approve the Personnel and Additional Personnel Report as presented. Dr. Henderson?
Good evening, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and members of the Board of School Trustees. This evening, I would like to call special attention to the following two retirements. Jay True. Jay has been a dedicated employee for 23 years, most recently serving as the Assistant Director of Transportation. And also Tamara Lannon. Tamara Lannon has served MCCSC for the last 11 years and is currently serving as a Business Office Coordinator. On behalf of MCCSC, I would like to extend a special thank you to these retirees for their many years of dedicated service to our district. At this time, I request that you please approve the personnel recommendations as presented in your board packet, in the personnel report and the additional personnel report.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Do we have any comments from the board? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the Personnel and Additional Personnel Report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Next, we move on to contracts. Do I have a motion to approve the contracts as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Brandon and seconded by Kathy. Ross? Kathy? Mr. Kenny?
Thank you, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, members of the board. There are 12 contracts and one right-of-way agreement before you tonight. I recommend approval of the contracts and agreement as presented.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board about these contracts or the right-of-way? Okay. All those in favor of the motion to approve the contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Now we move on to district updates, and we have several of those to be presented tonight. We will begin with the ALPS update from the Interim Superintendent for Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, Mrs. Harmon.
Thank you, President Hennessy, Dr. Winston, and members of the Board of School Trustees and community for allowing me to come here tonight and speak to you about our MCCSC Elementary High Ability Services. So just as I start talking about high ability services in MCCSC, and again, specifically tonight, we have high ability services for students through all grades, but tonight we're speaking in particular about the services provided at the elementary level. And I think it's important to know that as an instructional approach as a district, our teachers and building principals develop the most appropriate educational experience for each and every child. All schools provide differentiated instruction and opportunities for acceleration when students are ready for that, and that's available regardless of the identification as a high ability student. What that might look like at a school in this blue box are grade level high ability groups, subject skipping if a student is ready to advance, flexible ability grouping, inquiry-based instruction, which allows a student to really engage in content at their level, and of course, our ALPS program that we're going to speak about more later in the presentation as well. As we talk specifically about high ability identification, we are guided by Indiana Code, which identifies a high ability student as a student who performs at or shows the potential performing at an outstanding level of accomplishment in at least one domain when compared with other students of the same age, experience, or environment, and is characterized by exceptional gifts, talents, motivation, or interests. Criteria for identification is again stipulated in that code, is that districts use a variety of criteria to inform that identification, including quantitative measures of both ability and achievement and qualitative checklists of high ability behavior and student potential. So in MCCSC, what we use for identification is a norm reference measure of ability potential called the COGAT, which is all students in grades kindergarten, 2nd, and 5th take that assessment. And then we have norm referenced adaptive measure of achievement and performance. That's our NWEA. All students grades 2 through 8 take that test. And then for the qualitative observational measure of gifted characteristics, we have the Renzulli high ability behavior characteristics, and also something called TOPS folder, which stands for Teacher's Observation of Potential in Students, and every student has that TOPS folder. Every teacher is using that for all students, where they're able to kind of identify characteristics that they see in the classroom, and it's really a good instructional tool for learning as a whole, not just high ability identification. When we look specifically at our accelerated learning program for students, that's what ALP stands for. Sometimes we forget. Of our 5,338 MCCSC K through 6 students, and we're referencing last year numbers here because we'll start identification process. So just to clarify, of those 5,338, 705 K through 6 students were identified as high ability. You'll remember in the definition that it said in one domain, so we identify in 3 potential domains: general intellectual, math, and language arts. And general intellectual means that the student identified as high ability in both math and language arts. Any students that they can identify in those specific areas as well. So if we look at the pie chart to the right, that's 13% of our students in MCCSC K through 6 are identified as high ability. The national average for that identification is about 10%, so we're a little bit higher. Of those 705 students, 116 of those students are in our ALPS program, and they're in grades 3 through 6, and that equates to 5 ALPS classes. A little history on our ALPS program. There has been kind of high ability students in MCCSC since the early 1970s, when we had a mentorship program that paired students with mentors. But really, the iteration of the ALPS program that we see now started in about 1985 at University Elementary School, and it quickly expanded and evolved into the elementary ALPS program for MCCSC 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. For the last decade, it has been a district goal to increase the access to high ability programs and services, including access to ALPS. So one strategy for increasing access and opportunity has been to improve the practices and tools used to identify students with high abilities. So what we have done there for the identification process in terms of increasing that is all kindergarten students complete the COGAT screener. This was first implemented in 2021. Prior to that time, schools were identifying kindergarten students that they thought should take that screener. Instead, we give it to all kindergarten students, where, again, in an attempt to eliminate bias in the identification on a human level. And then second, TOPS, that teacher's observation of potential in students, which I mentioned is just a great instructional tool for teachers to keep information about their students, think about how they are as learners. It's used as a universal screener of high ability behavior grades K through 6, first implemented in 2021, and again, that's eliminating some test bias that exists, that we know exists in standardized tests. Additionally, application materials are sent to students based on building and district norms, not national norms, which ultimately means there are students in every single school building who are invited to apply for our ALPS program. Everyone is welcome to apply, but are invited to apply. Just to look at that impact on increasing access and opportunity, the chart that you're seeing is actually a chart of 4th and 3rd graders who have been sent application materials. When a student identifies as high ability in that cohort, they will be sent those application materials, but every student is welcome to apply, and we send general information to our whole community about what the application is, what the deadlines are, and things like that. But you can see our increase in sending application materials to students. And again, it's on norm referenceability and achievement assessments and teachers' observations of students. Of course, another thing that we have done to increase access and opportunity, at the January 2023 regular meeting, the Board of School Trustees voted to add 3rd grade to the ALPS program and to transition the elementary ALPS program to Fairview Elementary, with the intent of increasing access to options to meet students' needs. This was aligned to equity goal number 1, and that redesign used and is using programmatic strategies to increase access to the ALPS program. So what that's looked like. Beginning in the 23-24 school year, 3rd grade was added, transitioned to centrally located Fairview Elementary School. We knew anecdotally that some families were not going to ALPS because university is located farther away from some of our schools, just physically. We also provided open access to the Arts Integration Program, which is hosted at Fairview as well. Any student is welcome to attend that program in our district. And we provided transfers and busing became available for siblings of ALPS students to also attend Fairview Elementary. Prior to that, a sibling might have attended university with their sibling that was in the ALPS program, but the family would have provided their own transportation for the student to attend. So here's that transition timeline in a little bit of a different way. In the 23-24 school year, we had grades 3 and 4 at Fairview. This was last year. And grades 5 and 6 at university. In our current school year, grades 3, 4, and 5 are hosted at Fairview. Grade 6 is at university. And next year in 25-26, all 4 grades of the ALPS program will be at Fairview Elementary School. A moment to talk about what that has meant for our transportation department. It has been a logistical challenge to have 2 ALPS sites. They have Fairview and University have earlier drop-off times to ensure on-time arrival of ALPS students. And we utilize a shuttle system between the 2 schools in order to reduce ride time at the end of the day. However, in the 25-26 school year, when we go back to 1 site, we anticipate a reduction in travel time for ALPS students. This is a chart of ALPS enrollment from 2019 to 2020. And what you're looking at is you see the school years go through. Then under that class of, talking about graduating class, what grade, entry grade. So in the blue columns, right, we've got the 4th grade coming in. And then in the orange, there's where we have 4th and 3rd grade both coming in the same school year, 23 and 24. We can see how many students applied for ALPS, how many were invited to ALPS, and how many accepted their placement. And that bullet's getting cut off a little bit, but it says 2 classrooms were created in those 21-22 school year and 22-23 school year. And all of the other years, there's been 1 classroom at the grade level. Here's program enrollment in the at Fairview specifically. In 23-24, we had 3rd graders enter. 24 students. They are currently 4th graders, so you'll see them in that pink row. 28 of them have, well, all 24 of them returned. The number goes up to 28 because we had students move into the district or decide to start ALPS programming in their 4th grade year instead of their 3rd grade year. So we had 100% returning, but more students ultimately are in that cohort of 4th graders. The students who started in their 4th grade year at Fairview are the blue row. There were 19 students, 84% of them returned. We still have a larger group of students this year with 22, again, because students decided to start in their 5th grade year or students moved into our district and were eligible. And then we have 21 3rd grade students at Fairview this year as well that just started the ALPS program. This is a typical day for the ALPS student at Fairview. Just kind of shows you their schedule. You can see that for their English language arts and math, science, and social studies instruction. They're in their ALPS cohort, getting that accelerated learning. And for lunch, recess, specials, that refers to music, art, they are together with all of Fairview students. When we think about evaluating this ALPS transition from university to Fairview and the inclusion of third grade, it really is hard to draw any conclusions at this point in time because we just haven't had much time, right? We have 1 year of data to look at. And also the small group size means anomalies are contextual. There's all kinds of reasons a family may decide to apply, may decide to attend, and those kinds of things. And they get very specific that can have to do with just familial reasons. However, we really do want to continue to monitor and analyze both quantitative and qualitative data, and we'll be conducting a staff and family survey this fall to understand what the thoughts are of the people participating in the program and what their experience has been like. As we consider where we are, we want increased identification and diversity, and so what does that mean for increased participation mean? We have high ability services at all homeschools, and then we offer ALPS Fairview program for students if they would like. And so we want to continue to provide resources, support, and professional learning for meeting the needs of all learners at all schools so that a family ultimately can make a decision about which program, which high ability services are the most important for them or most appropriate for them. Any questions?
Out of curiosity,
Sure.
have we seen any or looked at any data of the geographics of where ALP students were attending, going to university versus where those ALP students homeschooled are now going to Fairview? Has there been any?
I don't think we have specifically looked at that, but I think that's a really interesting metric to look at. So, yeah.
I was just curious.
I'm on that committee, and I think that there are more schools represented now that Fairview has become more the place where ALPS is happening, just more centrally located. I'm pretty sure they said something like that, but then again, my brain's a sieve, and I could be wrong.
I do think you're right.
Yeah, it would be interesting to have that data. That's an interesting data point for sure. Any other questions?
I think it's very exciting. I've been on that committee as a board member. Now I'm in my 8th year, but I've been on and off of it, and it's really nice to see the access and the mindfulness and the intentionality of trying to identify kids that are not just in the upper income, which is so often the grades and the standardized test scores identify kids that are from a more educated and wealthier background, and so you end up with a very segregated group of kids. And so it's been interesting to be in the conversations as a layperson, just hearing about the TOPS thing and being able to have other ways to identify kids that are definitely belong, but are not what your traditional ALPS kid did look like when my kids were small. So I think that is just a really huge difference. And I do remember, part of all of our equity issues coming together is the teacher identifying the kid. And I know that there are a lot of studies that teachers of color are more likely to identify kids of color as being high ability. And so it ties into our work at trying to diversify also our teaching staff. But just training them on what that looks like is also great. So anyway, it's great progress, and I'm grateful for all the work and the intentionality in it.
Yeah, and for those listening who don't know what committee Kathy's referring to, it's the High Ability Committee. And so board members do sit sort of ex officio on various committees in the corporation, just for information and knowledge sake. And so, yeah, that committee does a lot of great work. Any other comments, questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, Ms.
Thank you so much as well.
Next, we will hear from the Director of Secondary Education, Mr. Gilpin, on Scholastic Esports, which is a thing we do now, apparently. No, it is. Esports. It's cool stuff.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited about this. This has been kind of a passion of mine, and actually Sean Condell's here. He's here to support this, plus much of this information we're going to present tonight is things that he's brought to the table. And so I was told my time limit, and I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I've been working on it, so I may be speaking a little fast to try to get it all in, because I don't know how much I want to actually leave out, because there's so much going on. But the first thing is, what is Scholastic Esports? And just the elephant in the room is gaming. We're going to play some games. But there's a little bit more to that than just sitting behind a computer. Know that, yes, in this gaming atmosphere, they'll be doing clubs or varsity sports. Clubs means they're going to be playing against themselves or against other schools within the district, or could possibly play other schools within the state through this Indiana Esports Network. The varsity teams actually compete at the state level against other schools. And so right now, Bloomington North and Bachelor have varsity teams. Bloomington South is their first year in, so they're required to be a club team this first semester, but will be varsity in the second semester. So what games do we play? The Indiana Esports Network supplies the games, and what we have created is this list of games so that we can give this to the parents so they know what games are available for their student, the rating and the description, and then they can initial what games they would like their student to play or not to play. No student will be allowed to play in something that's rated higher than their age. So if the rating's 16 and above and they're 13, they won't be allowed to play in it. But this gives a description to the parents so they can understand where it is. You can see that just a couple examples here. One's on a PC, one's on Nintendo Switches. So there's various gaming type of systems. And we talked about the Indiana Esports Network. This is designed by a group of educators who saw a need for students to be able to compete in gaming and wanted to create a safe environment for that with a goal and a mission you can see the goal and mission to foster this opportunity for students who might not always be involved in school. And so it's 100% volunteer driven. There's over 100 schools within the state of Indiana who participate, or 100 districts within the state to participate. The gaming arena that we have here at MCCSC, every secondary school has one. Some of the schools, the students actually built the computers. The rest of them were purchased and brought in. The design is pretty incredible. It is state of the art type of stuff going on, but it allows for instruction, gaming, shoutcasting, and streaming. If you're not familiar with shoutcasting, it is basically like if you're watching the Olympics and you hear the broadcasters going, that's what they're doing. So the students will be actually doing that while it's going on. At the middle school level, unfortunately, there is some age restrictions. So what they are doing is recording the event and then doing the shoutcast after that so that then they can practice that. So when they get to high school, they'll be able to participate in the streaming and shoutcasting. So here's some examples of some of the esports rooms. I hope that the Scholastic Esports rooms, I hope you get a chance to see this. The one on the far right is in the BGS. The one in the middle and the bottom middle is the Bloomington South. The one in the upper left is Bloomington North. The one in the bottom left is Bachelor's. And of course, the other schools have them as well. And they're in various stages of getting set up. This was done and funded through the 3E grant, and it really boosted the program a ton to be able to do what we're able to do. We're going to be ahead of many schools, and as a school who's been participating for a few years, it really jumped Bachelor's game up really fast. So what are some other things that esports? There's employability skills. The communication, you've already seen some of the things that have happened here. If you have ever been around gaming at all, if you have a child or you game yourself and you put on a headphone and you listen to some of the conversations that have taken place, they're not always all that positive that are going on. What this does is in a coaching adult environment through Indiana Esports Network, as well as the coach for the team of the school, it allows them to have conversations about how to talk to each other, in a team environment, how to talk to the opponents in a proper way without being too derogatory. And so when you start talking about some of the employability skills, you talk about that communication, getting along with others, being there on time, and being dependable for teammates. So there's a lot of employability skills that go along with this Scholastic eSports. Career pathways, what can happen and what can come out of this for these students who participate in there. This is an example of the ecosystem of Scholastic eSports. Now, this isn't necessarily careers that come out of it, but could come out of it. As well as careers that can. When you hear about the communication skills that we talk about, the gaming skills, the technology, the computer science, all that is part of it. In fact, Bloomington North and Bloomington South have been able to get a next level program study. It's called Scholastic eSports Computer Science Career Pathways through the state of Indiana. Students who graduate could possibly have 12 dual credits. And based on the current diploma, which is probably going to change, but the current diploma, they can get honors or technical honors diplomas through this program, and they can be credited towards, they have credits towards the certificate program at Ivy Tech. So you can see a lot of possibilities of what is in for students who are and choose this as a career pathway. The Academy and BGS at some point may move in that direction, but the capacity is not allowed that at this point, but they are still having the club sport, which talks about the employability skills and still fosters that opportunity that may be future into different aspects of the computer science realm. Bachelor Middle School, of the 3 middle schools, has been doing this the longest and so has created an esports production class. In that class offering, you can see the various things that students are learning and being able to do. Students in this class don't necessarily have to be on the competitive team, the varsity team. And some of them are, some of them are not, but it's what we talk about is open in the realm that this is more than just sitting in front of a computer playing a video game. So, Tri-Nord, how'd that get in there? Bachelor was esports state champs this past spring. I don't know how that got in there. She told me. Jackson Creek Tri-North, again, they're just starting. They're developing their arena, as we call it. And one of the things that they're actually talking about on their classes is the mathematical aspect of it. There are lots of stats involved in gaming. Talking about statistical analysis, data, ratios, all these type of things. And so they're talking about making that part of their learning process. Some of the other benefits you can see right here. I'm going to touch briefly on each of these. We've really talked about the college and career pathway, but just so you know, there are plenty of scholarship opportunities out there now for esports, Scholastic esports participants. There's $5 to $8 million that were never even distributed assigned to this. So we have a very viable pathway for some students who may not have actually attended college at some point, but because of this opportunity, may now pursue it and may have a means to help pay for their schooling because of that. So it's a lot of stuff going on. This right here, this just came out on Instagram. Purdue has I'm hoping this works because it's a short video. So this is Purdue's new gaming arena, and they're probably not even the largest of the schools in the state of Indiana, and it is now a Big Ten sport. So there's a lot of opportunities for our students and to be at the front of that list. So some of the engagements, Mr. Caudell actually did a study with his students back in 2019, asked them, how many of you are involved in other activities? 80% of the students that were involved in the Scholastic eSports were not involved in other co-curricular or extracurricular activities at Bloomington North. In addition to that, the study you can see there that was published in the National Center for Educational Statistics showed more students participating in the classroom. Also, attendance rates tend to be higher for students who are a part of Scholastic eSports. If you're more engaged, you're attending more, you would think this is the next step, and that's what the statistics show. Students are performing better in the classroom. Well, if you're performing better, you're attending more, your behavior probably is going to be better as well because you are not connected with some other students. You're connected with a group of people. You're connected with a mentor, teacher, coach, however you want to call them. You've built these positive, strong relationships. You want to be at school. You want to do these things. And to be honest, one of the other aspects of Scholastic eSports in most schools and here at MCCSC, it actually falls under the guidance of athletics, which means you have to abide by the athletic standards of attendance, behavior, and academics. So all that, you can see the behavior tends to, they've noticed that it has improved for students. And obviously, if all those things are starting to go, you're going to start to see a little stronger sense of an emotional health, a social emotional health. There's some more information there that you can look at. It's a little more scientific about it, but there is some information and things out there saying that it actually helps the students in here. And a little bias. We've had this for a few years, but last year we were focused. The Bachelor Middle School was a part of it. And I just wanted to share some of the statistics related to what we talked about for benefits. Now, these statistics are not, I wouldn't go to IU and try to present these to prove anything. However, in our small study, we had in our population last year at Bachelor Middle School, there are 469 students who did not participate in esports, and there were 25 students who did. Looking at the comparison, the students who did not participate, they had a 92% attendance rate. The students who participated had a 95% attendance rate. Chronic absences means that you have been absent at least 10% of the school year. The students who not part of esports had 21% of the students were labeled chronically absent. Only 8% of the students in esports were labeled as chronically absent. Attendances, you have to call in, have doctor notes, whatever that may be. Of those who were non-esports, 47% of the absences were unexcused, whereas students who were part of esports, only 16% of their absences were unexcused. This is the 23 iLearn scores, math scores. So this is their 6th grade and 7th grade scores. Same cohort, their 7th and 8th grade scores, that's last year. A little chart that makes it a little easier to read. The students in Scholastic eSports, 44% of them were deemed proficient by the state of Indiana through iLearn in the 23. But in 2024, 60% of them were. The students not participating in that, you can see their numbers were at 35 to 40. So whole school, there's an improvement of 5%, and this is a cohort group. Scholastically, in the Scholastic eSports, 16%. So you might argue, well, these kids were probably in advanced math classes. No, only 6 out of the 25 students were actually in what might be labeled as a high ability math class. Discipline. 25 students, you know, it's not a huge number there, but only 5 of them, their names appeared in Skyward Discipline. What that means is if your name is in Skyward Discipline, you've received something as little as possibility of a lunch detention, all the way up to an expulsion. These students, only 5 of them, that's 20%. The whole body, 31% of their names appeared in there at least once. The good news is the students that were in esports, none of those students actually received any out-of-school suspension as well. So again, I don't know if you can prove anything with this information, but it goes along with the data and the national research. And so we're pretty excited about what happens there. Oh man, I got the slides still in there. Questions?
I don't have a question, but I do think it would be interesting to see how that data stacks up against other extracurriculars, just to see if the trend is similar, or if it's above or below or what it is. And I just want to say, for those of you who are skeptics out there, because if you're not familiar with esports, like you might see this and be really skeptical. I actually have a son who we just dropped off at Purdue a couple weeks ago. And he was super excited at one point because he got recruited to play on some esports team. And I was kind of like, what? What do you mean? Like recruited? Like, I don't really understand. But so you saw the gaming setup at Purdue. But I think it's actually really interesting because as I would listen to him play, I started to sort of just take note of the way the massive amount of communication that it does take, especially when you're playing on a team sort of game where there's strategy involved and there are all these voices coming through at once, and he's sort of like rapid fire. And he said, you know, I'm still a peon in this sort of level of authority or positional power in the game, right? So he has to take orders from a lot of people, but I could also hear him just navigating those relationships in a really unique way, which was very different from my 12-year-old who still tends to scream into his mic and headphones. So, I mean, some of that's maturity, but other parts of it I think are just having to learn. You can't scream over one another in situations like that. So it's fascinating, and I think it takes what kids are already, many of them, doing at home and translating that into real life workforce skills. So yeah, super interesting.
I think you said you were the state champs. Is that?
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to comment as well. I have to confess that I don't know if it was Mr. Caudell or Mr. Gilpin who initially put a full court press. I mean, contacted me a couple of years ago about this idea of esports, and I have to confess as well that I was like, "You want me to go to the superintendent and promote the idea of children playing games in our schools?" And so initially, I probably wasn't particularly warm and fuzzy, but then Mr. Caudell did bring some students in, and they put on an amazing performance and did their research and began to talk about the pros and cons, the benefits, and that's the first time I probably had heard about scholarship opportunities and that it was kind of growing across the state of Indiana. And so I happened to mention it to Mr. Gilpin, and oh my goodness, he continued to kind of shoot me articles every day. I was getting research articles about esports. And so when the opportunity for the 3E grant came about, and it's really focusing on college and career opportunities, I was really excited to learn more, to make sure that I spent some time getting a better understanding of how it was going to impact our academics, our engagement, our behavior, and student performance. And so I just want to say kudos to both of you and to say thank you for opening my eyes and providing this additional opportunity for our students. And certainly looking at some of the early data is encouraging in very many ways. And certainly I just want to conclude my comment by saying congratulations. When I learned that Bachelor was the esports state champs, I said I will never hear the end of this. But thank you so much, Mr. Gilpin, for putting this together, and I know Mr. Caudell contributed as well. So very excited, and we will be having a ribbon ceremony soon.
Yes. Yep.
Anybody else? Okay, next up is our monthly update on the consolidation of Childs and Templeton Elementary from Dr. Winston.
Thank you so very much. I really do greatly appreciate the opportunity to provide an update to our community and to our school board, and I would like to say thank you to the board for providing the opportunities for us to provide these regular updates. Over the last 58 days, since our team began to tackle this opportunity and challenge as well, there have been a lot of conversations, lots of discussions to figure out how best can we proceed to make sure that we do this work justice. You may recall at the July board meeting, I shared with everyone the merger plan process overview. And as you look at these three components, we've been very intentional and we've tried to be as inclusive as possible, recognizing that there are additional opportunities that are going to be forthcoming. But we began by making sure that we prioritize the comprehensive facilities assessment. That has begun in the month of July, and I'll give a little bit of an update on where we are with that in a few moments. Community engagement. We wanted to begin by prioritizing our MCA partnerships and communicating with our teachers, and so those were some of the very first meetings and engagements that we began with, and then moving into our families and our community partners as well. And then the third area is around best practices and data review. We wanted to make sure that we were looking at all of those factors and taking some of the best practices and the lessons learned from across the country and throughout the state to inform ultimately the recommendations that we will bring forward to this board in a few months. All of that designed for the focus of coming up with a successful and comprehensive merger plan. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that that is the framework that we're working within. One of the early things that we did about a month and a half ago was we began putting together our project charter. Just as a friendly reminder, you can go and look at this. It identifies what's within scope of this work and what's outside of the scope. I'm not going to go through because we spent some time talking about that last month, but a lot of time and energy and attention was given to making sure that we were honoring the directive that we were given by the Board of School Trustees. So if we talk about research and best practices, we've looked at several different pieces of information, and this is going to be an ongoing process. This is not you do it and then you stop and you're done. This is including looking at a lot of different research articles, case studies, best practices, peer-reviewed articles, books. We've had conversations about contacting some of the researchers. We've also had some conversations about contacting school districts who've engaged in some of this work as well to talk with them about, tell us the real deal in terms of what did you actually learn and what are some lessons that you learned that you would not repeat and lessons that you would make sure that anyone that was going to undergo this kind of work could benefit from. Some of the research that we've looked at has been very general, while others are very specific to particular components of what we are considering. And then we will also make sure that the list of the research materials and case studies and best practices, all of that will be available on our website by the end of this week. So when we think about an actual framework, this comes from one of the articles that we studied very early on, meaning in the month of July. But it's really referred to as an equity-based framework for achieving integrated schooling. If you look at these 6 components, we are making sure that we are consistently referring back to this and making sure that we're thinking about and talking about and identifying some of the key principles. What does inclusive communication and outreach look like? We're going to have some time to talk a little bit about that. Dr. Finley's going to come forward in a few minutes and talk about where we are with that and where we're going. Authentic community engagement. What does that look like? Who is included in those conversations? And how do we make sure that it's as broad-based as possible? Looking at the data and the contextual analysis, understanding the data that exists within each of our schools, meeting with our building principals, getting a better understanding of those various factors that will ultimately become part of our success criteria. Diversity principles and goals. One of the directives that we've been asked to focus on is balancing SES. That's the #1 goal that we've been assigned to tackle. SES integration and student assignment plan. That's one of the biggest components that we've spent some time on, and we don't have an answer yet, but we are certainly beginning to do some analysis and some consideration and examination of what are the various considerations and components that will go into that ultimate recommendation. And then finally, resource commitment and sustainability. We recognize that there will be some unknown costs today, but our intent is to hopefully begin to know those costs and narrow those down in the next several weeks and months so that we can make a determination as to what is a reasonable amount of money to allocate and how do we sustain whatever changes we might need to put in place. So those are things that we are constantly and consistently coming back to and talking through as a team. And so I think it's really important for you to know that that is part of the framework if we're going to be successful in integrating our schools. So let's talk a little bit about the facilities assessment. You may know that during the month of July, my first month, we contracted with CSO Architects to ask them to do a comprehensive facilities assessment. That work has begun. They've made multiple visits to our schools, to each of our 2 schools already. I've had a chance to meet with the architects and engineers in many different fields to make sure that they are as comprehensive as possible. Had a chance to meet with them earlier this week to kind of get an update and a status on where they are. They are on target to be able to come back to us in the month of October with some recommendations and an update on their assessment. So we're very excited to hear what they have to say. It's very complex. There are a lot of complexities to this work, but there is no aspect of the building facility or the grounds that they are not examining. And so we're very appreciative of the comprehensive nature and approach that they're taking. Community engagement. This has been a massive priority for us. I know that it's only been 58 days, but during those 58 days, we began having meetings in July and August, and our goal and our focus was getting input and feedback from Childs and Templeton teachers as the first priority. We wanted to make sure that we heard from them because we understood there are lots of concerns that teachers have, and we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to talk with our teachers union. We wanted to be able to hear what is it that they need us to focus in on, and what are some considerations and factors that they want to make sure that are um, taken to our team as we're moving forward. We also knew that we wanted to hear from other staff members within our building, as well as our families, on some key considerations for ensuring that we do, in fact, have a successful school merger. And part of those conversations have focused on defining what, in fact, does a successful school merger look like. The format of each of our meetings has provided an opportunity for information sharing, some small group discussions, as well as individual feedback. We've utilized a variety of discussion protocols to make sure that diversity of perspectives are heard and are inclusive of both of our school staff and family members. And then the third thing is we just want to make sure that we are carefully considering all options and topics. What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Dr. Finley to come forward to talk a little bit more about our community engagement process and where we are and what that looks like.
Thank you, Dr. Winston, President Hennessy, members of the board. So I've been tasked, and we've been tasked with engaging the community in conversation around this merger. And essentially, we have 7 groups that we've identified. And over this time, we're hopeful that these groups will reach the masses within each school community. It's challenging with each school community having around 450 to 500 students in each community to ensure that we're hearing the voice of all constituents. And we've started early on with meeting with MCEA, and that particular group had a lot of great questions. We started with about 70 questions in an email from them, and it sort of started to formulate the topics that we were going to focus on throughout our time in these discussions. And then we had a staff teacher advisory group, and that group is a great group of diverse representation of staff, multi-age teachers, non-multi-age teachers, special education teachers, instructional coach, a lot of different people around the table, and also some great staff members that are very important to each school community. So it's just a variety of people that came together. And then this last meeting, we had PTO officers, and then we offered it out to the rest of the community, but we needed to, because we were doing it in this space, only have a certain number of people. So there were around 50 people. Every seat was taken, and it was actually a great conversation. It's really challenging to have an auditorium full of 200 people and have meaningful collaborative discussions. So I think we were able to accomplish that in the last meeting. And in the upcoming meeting with community members, I've had each of the principals identify within the school community a diverse representation of their parent population, and make sure that it's parents of students with special needs students, high ability students, and a wide array of demographics within the school community. I think it's the only way that we can truly hear everyone's voice. I think, and along the way as well, and this is important to note, on September 12th and then again on November 7th, we're going to have a large community forum, and we haven't identified the location. It's going to have to be a large area, either each of the schools or Jackson Creek Middle School. And we'll have a panel discussion and some good back and forth conversation. And along the way, we're going to continue to bring people in. And then we know that the building discussion groups are happening. We're doing district discussion with the association as well, and making sure that everyone is around the table. At some point throughout this process as well, we're going to have faith-based groups and other community leaders as well. We'll invite the mayor and neighborhood association, city council, boys and girls club representation. We're going to make sure that anyone who recognizes the importance of public schools, our children in this community, are around the table, and that they understand the process, and that hopefully, we're able to receive feedback from them. So far, and this has been a very formative process, I think everyone needs to understand at this point, things are starting to be narrowed down and the conversation is starting to be more focused. But at this point, there's a lot of questions that have not been answered, and I think we're starting to gather some great information. And I think the conversations have sort of changed based on the feedback that we've received. We also have a lot of opportunities. There's an email a link on the main web page, and we've had about probably, I think, 30 or so emails, and some of them have about 10 or 15 questions within them. So a lot of questions have been asked, and we're receiving all of those and listening to them, and it's sort of guiding the discussions that we have also with our admin merger team. And as we do facility assessments, and Dr. Henderson will also start being involved as we look at staffing, we look at building capacity, all of those things that are the concrete pieces that are going to be part of this conversation. So all of that's starting to evolve throughout this process. And we're meeting once a week until December. And when we present in December, we're going to have a meeting every Thursday night in some form, reaching out to the community.
Dr.
Yeah.
Finley, can you just repeat those dates for the large community forums that are forthcoming?
Yeah, September 12th and November 7th.
Okay, thank you.
And the good thing at that time, we're going to start having more information to share, and I think more concrete, pieces to this big puzzle that we're starting to figure out. So great conversations have been happening so far. A really good collaborative conversation with the community at the last meeting, and we've had the same with teachers. They've been very positive and very productive meetings so far.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've heard reference to our administrative planning team, and that really is a group of individuals, both from our central office as well as from our leadership at our buildings, to really help us think about what are the factors that we need to be considering. On the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see some of the topics, certainly not all-inclusive. Communication is at the top of the chart because that's really important to us. We want to make sure that we are effectively communicating. We're working with our communications team to make sure, although we're down staff member in our communications team, we're hoping to be able to strengthen that in the next several weeks as well. Looking at staffing, teachers want to know what the staffing is going to look like. They want to know, what are they teaching, what grade level are they teaching, what building are they teaching in, and so that's why it's been very important for us to hear the perspectives of our teachers and our staff members in our buildings. Facilities assessment, you've heard us speak about that already. Operations, food service, transportation, in what way are those areas going to be impacted as a result of a successful merger? School start times, are there going to be changes? Will they be the same start times? Will there be different start times? Will both buildings start at the exact same time? Will they be different? So those are some considerations that have to be looked at. Technology, massive technology considerations that we are taking into our conversations. Looking at the PTO structure, I agree with Dr. Finley that we had a great initial conversation with some of the leaders within our PTO groups. Was it just last week or 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. And that's the very beginning. And they raised a lot of questions that we are certainly spending some time reflecting on, and they've given us some suggestions that we need to consider as well. Diverse learner supports. What is this going to look like for students who are in the pre-K area? What does it look like for our students who have disabilities? What about our English language learners? What about our multi-age? We need to be thoughtful about all of those areas of programming. Merger support services. In what way might we support the teachers as they go through this transition? What does that look like? What do our teachers need from us? What do they need from one another? In what way are we going to be supportive of our families? What kind of family support do we need to be thinking about? And so those are some conversations that we will be having in the very near future with our families. And most importantly, what about our students? How do we support our students as we transition to a merged school? What does that look like? And how do we make sure that we are putting their needs at the forefront of all of the conversations in terms of planning for those supports? Professional learning, professional development, what types of additional training might be necessary for the faculty members and the staff members? I've talked a little bit about programming. Both schools are IB schools, but what does that mean to have two IB schools begin to merge? What does that look like in terms of programs of study? Title I, there are lots of conversations and questions about what are the changes that are going to happen relative to Title I. Will there be less funding? Will there be more funding? Will there be fewer staff members? Will there be more staff members? All of that is a part of it. Extended day, what does that look like? Particularly if you have a child that's in one school and a child that's in another school, potentially, what does that look like in terms of extended day planning and programming for families? What about the transportation considerations? What requirements are there with the Indiana Department of Education if we're going to tackle something like this? What are the requirements that we have to take into consideration as well? And then transition between the two schools. So those are just a few of the topics that we are tackling and beginning to research and study and to make sure that we are going to be able to come forward with a comprehensive game plan that covers each of these areas. In addition to that, as we've had, I don't know how many sessions we've had so far, Chris. Okay, so within the first 10 sessions, and most of those sessions have been with teachers, there have been a few themes that are beginning to emerge. What's the configuration of schools? And when they say that, they're referring to what's the grade configuration? What's it going to be? That is central to everything. Continuity of programs. Will programs remain as they are? Will there be changes? Will they even exist? We've got to have some conversations around some of that. Transportation, safe passage. Safe passage refers to how do we make sure and ensure that we are providing opportunities for our children to safely go to and from school. That's what safe passage is, and that is a major priority for us. Transition logistics. All of the logistical considerations and what do the systems of support look like? Staffing. What is this going to cost us? What are the areas in which funding is going to be necessary? What about Title I funding? Are we going to lose funding? Are we going to have increased funding? All of those are some of the themes that our teachers and our parents and our community members are beginning to bring forward with us. And then what does engagement and collaboration look like? Hopefully, this short list of items begins to highlight for you some of the complexities that have to be considered, and must be planned for in a very strategic and intentional manner. But those are the kinds of conversations that we began to have on July 1st, technically July 3rd, and we're moving forward to make sure that we can bring forward a recommendation that will allow us to be successful. In terms of community engagement, we did begin those last month, and I've kind of highlighted, and Dr. Finley's highlighted some of the ones, but I want to kind of go through and just be crystal clear. Our very first meeting was very intentional with MCEA, the teachers union. We wanted to make sure that we heard from them. They've been very organized in meeting with one another and bringing teachers from both buildings. And we had 18 participants. It was an amazing discussion and opportunity to effectively collaborate on some of the factors. We then began having, on July 31st, we had our first discussion council. That's when you officially discuss with the teachers union, and we had 14 participants. Also on July 1st, because we're gluttons for punishment, we had a Child's Templeton advisory group. So who does both of those meetings? I think they were literally within 15 minutes of one another. And so we wanted to get those in as quickly as possible so we could begin to have some of those conversations. And so the principals worked very diligently to establish an advisory group of teachers from both buildings that represent the perspectives and the experiences of both buildings. And so that particular day was a tough day because we were going from one meeting to the next meeting. But we then moved forward with having another Child's Templeton advisory group with a few more folks. We then wanted to make sure within the second week of school, we wanted to get out and speak with the faculty members of both buildings. So we initially went to the Templeton faculty meeting and spent a lot of time talking with them, hearing some of their questions and some of their concerns. We wanted to give them an overview. We had another discussion council with a meeting with the teachers union. And then the next day we went to the child's faculty meeting and had a similar conversation. And then on August 15th, which is our most recent meeting, no, that's not the most recent one. We had, no, I guess it is, our Child's in Templeton PTO and families. And so we had 43 participants. During the months of July and August, we've had approximately 220 participants in these meetings. And so we feel like that's a great beginning, but we also recognize that that is not an exhaustive effort. And that's why one of the things that Dr. Finley's been working toward is making sure that we have our large community forums that are going to be coming forward as well. So some of our community messaging planning, we've begun to work on strengthening our communication through our website. So if you go to our website and you click on the corporation tab on the left-hand side of the homepage, you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see the Child's Templeton merger. And underneath that, you will then be able to see the merger overview. And that's basically the updates that I'll be giving at every board meeting. You'll see our project charter. You will see the update to the board. The font's kind of small, so I'm trying to read it. And then you'll see the information that's presented at the board meeting. So if you click there, you'll be able to read all of the things. And so our intention is to make all of that information publicly available to you so that you can check us. You can review what we're doing. You'll have information. We have intentions of also making sure that our agendas and things and information is available so that folks can feel as if they at least are aware. You'll see our project charter. You'll see information regarding our updates. So our goal is working in that regard. As I indicated, we are down one person, but I think we're still moving forward to make sure that we are continuing to strengthen our messaging. I know that we are also going to begin having bi-weekly communications out to the Templeton and the child's family so that they are in the loop with where we are. While you can certainly go to the website, and we are continuing to strengthen that, I know that there have been some updates to how it's laid out. You can access this information two different ways on the website. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll be able to see a box that says Childs Templeton Merger, and a lot of this exact same information can be found there as well. In addition, one of the things that we put up shortly after the July board meeting was a Childs Templeton feedback form. Dr. Finley referenced that. We've had 25 to 30 responses, and I can assure you that our team is reviewing each and every one of those and continuing to refine our process based upon that feedback. So those of you who have had a chance to take the time to share feedback, suggestions, ideas, and concerns, please know that we are taking that to heart and we are having conversations about the content of that feedback. So we are very appreciative of that. In closing, just kind of sharing with you that upcoming, we have a few more teacher advisory groups. We're trying to meet, right here, we're meeting 2 consecutive weeks, but I think we've been trying to meet every couple of weeks with our advisory groups. And then we're going to have a joint advisory group with our community, parents, and guardians on September 12th. And then on the 19th, we'll bring back the advisory group again, and then we'll be bringing an update to you also at the September board meeting. So those are just a few of the highlights of our activities up to this particular point in time. And I, again, want to say thank you to the board, and I would like to open it up for questions as to anything that you would like additional information on.
Well, I'll just say, wow, what a lot of work in a short period of time and all that engagement. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing and your team and the teachers and everyone.
Any other comments or questions?
I have one thing. I just wanted to say how appreciative I have been of all the communication that we've been receiving on these updates. It has not gone unrecognized how much work is being placed into this, and I look forward to hearing more as it becomes available.
Yeah. And I know this has been a long process. I just want to say that, it was actually so Vice President Cooperman and I went to the last meeting, the August 15th meeting of PTO and family members. And I thought it was really interesting. At this point, the board, we do not have we've handed off the project, right? I've talked about handing off the baton. We've officially handed off the baton. Our superintendent and her administrative cabinet have this as their project, which they will then bring a recommendation back to us. But it was just interesting because we sit back and observe at this stage of the game, and watching people sort of have those conversations and place their priorities on these boards, and those things are collected, right? All of those things are being tracked and sort of cataloged and making their way into the things that we saw tonight. And so I just want to say thank you, because I mentioned to someone, there are 30 of these meetings essentially from July until December. And, that's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meetings for any one person, for a team, in addition to all of their other jobs and responsibilities. And I mentioned to someone, do you go to all of these? And this person said, I mean, I don't necessarily have to, but I have been, right? And I just think there's an enormous commitment from our team as they understand the importance of this work. And so I just want to highlight that, and also my gratitude for you and for what you've done so far. So thank you. Anybody else?
I'll just add my thanks. I know it's been said, and I agree with everything that everyone has said.
but I don't think it can be stated enough. Like April said, we sort of greenlit this and then turned it over to the team to really do the hard work, honestly. And I know that it takes a lot of time and effort and even emotional labor to do it right, to do it collaboratively and transparently. And I'm so thankful that you all are taking that on. Thank you.
I would just kind of conclude with just sharing that it is truly a team effort. There's no one person that's doing all of this work. We are collaboratively doing this work. It means a lot to us. It's very important that we work hard and that we have a successful plan for what this might look like. And while we are striving to strengthen our communication as a school corporation, we recognize there are opportunities for us to get better and better and better in how well we communicate, how often we communicate, who we communicate to, when we communicate. That is a priority for us, and we will continue to get better in that regard. And we will continue to get better in our efforts to reach out. That's why you're hearing us spend some time talking about some additional forms. We recognize the need for having some focused and targeted individuals who are in the building and that are representative of the student population and are representative of the faculty and staff in our buildings. And we recognize the need to open it up to a broader community of individuals who have something to say and that we want to be able to hear from. And so I look forward to those additional community forums where we have an additional opportunity to hear from our community members. And so please continue to hold us accountable. Continue to give us feedback. We are open to your thoughts, your suggestions, your ideas, and your recommendations. We are here to serve and we are here to partner, and we look forward to continuing to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. Our next update is on the attendance zone redistricting efforts. Do you have any updates for
Yeah,
us?
just a couple of comments. Our team has convened 2 to 3 meetings with our external consultant, and the focus of those conversations and those discussions have been around conveying some of the project parameters, making sure that what is being done is directly in alignment with the directive of the board. We are currently in the process of looking at and talking through with our consultant several scenarios that he thinks would be beneficial to us as we think about balancing SES and building capacity across our schools. And I would say we're still at the very beginning stages of that body of work. It's a pretty expansive body of work. It has even more complexities than the merger of 2 schools, as you might well imagine. But we are looking at these scenario opportunities and options alongside what our current enrollment looks like and against our existing boundaries. And so I just share that with you, that we are working towards establishing some perspectives and continuing to engage with that consultant to assist us in all of the various factors that need to be considered. Our consultant has worked with many school districts across the country, so we are learning a lot from him as to what does this look like and how do we proceed in the most appropriate and strategic manner. So that's the update that I have at this particular point in time, just letting you know that the work is still underway. And I do not have a timeline today for you. I don't think that a timeline has yet been established for us in doing this work, but it is certainly happening alongside the other work that's happening relative to the merger conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. Last, we have a presentation of the 2021 to 2025 strategic plan and the monthly updates that we receive on this. The final year of the plan, essentially.
Yes. So as many of you know, the strategic plan that currently exists is from 2021 through 2025, which is a 4-year plan. And so I want to be able to share a few updates with you in terms of where we are with our implementation. This is our final year of the existing strategic plan. And during this school year, we will continue to provide monthly updates to you. And there are 3 areas that we're going to be focusing on. The final update towards the identified outcomes that were initially established at the inception of the plan, the data that is available regarding those identified outcomes where appropriate, and then ultimately the resources that are necessary to inform the creation of the next strategic plan with opportunities for community input as well as collaboration. So this is a pretty massive undertaking as well, and we are excited to be able to provide some final updates on where we are and what we've accomplished during the last 4 years, and equally as excited to begin to have conversations around, well, what does the next iteration of our strategic plan need to look like? As a reminder, this is the strategic plan with all of the goals that we've been working toward. And there are 9 different goals that we're working toward, and those are the 9 goals that we will be reporting back to you during the next several months. So one of the changes that you'll notice in this schedule is that I've moved student learning to the very beginning of our sessions. And so in September, we will spend some time talking about equity goal number 3, which is about accelerating student learning. Purposeful and intentional in moving that there because that's the center of all the work that we do. Everything that we do has to center around accelerating student learning. And so I think it makes sense for us to move in that regard. And then from there, what are the ways in which we are providing access and opportunity to accelerate that student learning? And then what are the funding sources that are necessary? So we want to spend some time talking about school finance and funding and how does that relate to the referenda that we've passed over the last couple of years, moving on into health and safety. What are the professional learning requirements that are necessary? Communication. We've had communication goals. We have our communication plan that was established during the course of this strategic plan. And then looking at continued focus on our student discipline and then staff diversity. So that's the schedule of presentations that you're going to hear from our community member, our team. Our executive team during the next several months. This is the timeline that we're going to use for our community input, and this is just a little bit different than how we've done it this past year. We are going to then ask for feedback from our principals on the outcomes. How well are we moving forward on the outcomes that were established within our strategic plan? That information then will be shared with our executive team. We will review that research and prepare the updates that we will share at the board meeting. So each month we will provide that information at a public board meeting. And then following the public board meeting, we're going to be asking our community to give us feedback on information as to what do you want to see in the next strategic plan? What are some factors and considerations that we need to be putting on the table and looking at? And hopefully you'll see information from these presentations that will help to inform our upcoming strategic plan that will go into place sometime during 2025. So a little bit different process, but I think it's going to be a very valuable process for us because it's really going to help us to then begin to shape a new strategic plan. Each month, this is the outline of how we're going to proceed. We're going to share with you the outcomes. What outcomes do we have as a result of what we said from 2021 till now? What's the data that we have? And in some areas, we have really great data. In other areas, we don't have so much data. So there's an opportunity for us to be thinking about how do we gather the data? What have we accomplished? What are the accomplishments related to the particular outcome? So it's going to be an opportunity for us to celebrate some of the good things and the big wins that we have realized. How does this inform our future work? How will this impact our strategic planning? And then our community feedback, making sure that our community has an opportunity to have a say into the next strategic plan. So that's the outline of each of the presentations that you'll see over the next several months. We began doing strategic plan data reports. We intend to continue to do that. I think those will be very helpful to us, and you'll see some of the data that's been gathered, and you'll see opportunities where maybe we need to focus in and drill down even more on some of our data opportunities. And so we're very excited about continuing to provide these data reports every month. So that's the focus of what our strategic plan presentations are going to begin looking like starting in the month of September. And the next one is going to focus on student learning, equity goal number 3. And this is the timeline that we will follow to gather the information that will be necessary.
Thank you so much, Dr. Winston. Any questions or comments? Okay, finally, Dr. Winston, do you have any additional information to share tonight as the superintendent update?
I think I do. You guys make me talk a lot. So yes, lots of wonderful things. I really was grappling with how much to share, but I do have several things that I want to share. Successful school opening is the first thing I really want to share. I would like to thank the entire MCCSC employee groups for their hard work, their tireless commitment to making sure that we had a most successful school opening. I can't be more impressed or pleased with how well everyone rose to the occasion to make sure that our babies had a positive school opening experience. And you know that our students had a positive school opening experience because of the smiles, the laughter, the interaction that you had a chance to observe, and just hearing their conversation about seeing each other and seeing the teachers. I think that was all wonderful. I want to give a special shout out to our pre-K staff and community partners for a very successful opening of our expanded pre-K programs. Kudos to Dr. Dowling, who's in the audience, for his leadership and guidance on this very important collaboration. I want to say thank you to our community for our family-friendly referendum, which has allowed us to expand our pre-K program, without which we would not have been able to increase the number of children that are participating in this program. The trust and confidence from our community in our ability to collaboratively provide high-quality pre-K education to our youngest children is so truly and greatly appreciated. As my executive team and I continue to visit schools, we see lots of smiling faces and we hear the music of children's laughter as we visit classrooms, lunchrooms, bus routes, and playgrounds. Our teachers, our support staff, and administrators are busy making certain that our students are engaged in fun and interactive learning experiences, and our bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, and many others are hard at work caring for our students. Thank you to everyone for all that you do each and every day for the children of our community. We thank you and we appreciate you. The City of Bloomington and MCCSC received a joint award with the Award of Excellence for Partnership, special event, and the Indiana MS4 Partnership Annual Meeting. This award celebrated the collaboration of the Maker Challenge for 23-24 between the City of Bloomington and MCCSC. So we're very excited and honored to have received that recognition. Hoosier Hills Career Center is going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony on Thursday, August 29th from 9 to 10 a.m. to celebrate the completion of the Medical Simulation Lab, or SimLab. This event will include student presentations and medical simulations and provide networking opportunities for our students and local businesses. So if you're available, please plan on making a visit because it's very exciting to see this accomplishment come to life. Okay, Muffins with Marquet. I am very excited to host our first informal listen and learn session called Muffins with Marquet. I didn't come up with the name. On Friday, August 30th at Highland Park Elementary School. Parents, teachers, and families are encouraged to join me in the library at 8:45 a.m. for conversation, coffee, and of course, muffins. Comment cards will be available for parents who have limited time for conversation. The comment cards are going to provide parents and teachers with an opportunity to just kind of let me know what's going on, what's going well, what's not going well, what are some considerations and recommendations that you think that the superintendent needs to hear about. So I'm very excited about the Muffins with Marquet Listen and Learn series. We are going to hold that every other month at different schools throughout the corporation. And we'll also host a few more formal town hall style sessions on alternating months in the evenings in locations throughout the community. Parent University. Our second annual Preparing for High School and Beyond event in the Parent University series was held this past Saturday, August 24th at the Academy of Science and Entrepreneurship. We had more than 100 students and family members and parents attending, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So we are very excited to be able to have our second annual, and I can assure you we'll be having a third and continuing forward. Our next Parent University event is going to be held on Wednesday, September 25th. So mark your calendars. The topic is Understanding School Finance. How can we afford that? We encourage those interested in learning more about the complexities of school finance to join us in the CoLab here at 6 p.m. This will be a very informational evening for those who want to know more about how school finance work in the state of Indiana. Well, Scholastic Esports, you've already heard a little bit about that. So, and you probably heard that Bachelor, they were the state champions. But as part of our college and career readiness planning, we are so excited to see us move forward in this regard. As you all know, we have been under a heat advisory, and we have a heat advisory again tomorrow. Due to this heat advisory, we're going to continue to keep our students and our staff safe. All outdoor activities and events are canceled or postponed for elementary and middle school students, and recess is going to be inside. And then our high school students will adhere to our IHSAA guidelines for all of the sporting activities. And then last but not least, our students and our teachers will get a day off on Monday. Monday, September 2nd is Labor Day, and our schools will be closed, and we wish you all a wonderful 3-day weekend. Have fun, enjoy yourselves, and be safe. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Dr. Winston. And thank you to all in attendance tonight. You've stuck it out for almost 2 hours, so congratulations for that. No, thank you very much for just sticking around and being engaged. I really appreciate it when people, stay engaged in this process in whatever way they can, whether it's here or at home, through email. We always do want to hear from you, and so I just encourage you to continue having that conversation with us. The next regularly scheduled board meeting is Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, and with that, we are adjourned.
It gives me so much. A couple minutes should be